Good morning, everybody. Welcome to HomeRecordingMadeEasy.com, VisionRecordingStudios.com, and here on our YouTube channel. And I say good morning because it is literally 9 minutes after 4 in the morning, a Sunday morning. Yes, I am up early. I have my cup of coffee here. And I wanted to make this video because something has come up over the last, say, month with 3 separate students that I have, that I do private instruction for mixing and mastering and just general recording techniques. And I've noticed a pattern with the last 3 students, and I wanted to I'm not going to mention their names. It's not a dig against them. I just thought that, geez, this is something that's a pattern. I need to mention it to my subscribers in case some other folks are feeling the same way. And there's 3 things I want to share with you this morning, 3 reminders, if you will. And they're related, and one of them is really not related, but it's part of the list. So anyway, and working with these students that were in the very beginning stages with one, and the other 2 were a little bit more advanced, but I would say still in the beginners, just stepping into intermediate stages. So they were still new at the whole recording, mixing process. But they weren't completely brand new. But all 3 had found me through YouTube, and I appreciate that. Thank you so much. And so they've been watching my channel for a while, and these topics still came up. So I thought, okay, I've said these things in my videos before, but maybe I haven't driven the point home enough. So I want to share these 3 little things with you. So the very first thing, just to get it out of the way, is one of the ways to get a bigger mix, a bigger sounding mix, and to get something that sounds big and full at loud volumes, is to mix at low, quiet volumes, which I've said before. Other engineers have said this, but it's really true. And it's one of the hardest things to do is when you're mixing, to try to mix at a very low volume level, low enough to where you can't stand it, low enough to where you and I could sit at your mix station and have a conversation together with the music sounding a little bit louder to maybe just background music. The reason for that is when you mix at those low volumes, you have a very small, a much smaller window of space to mix in, which makes you work harder to get separation with all the different instrumentation and to EQ in a way that gives you more clarity. So when now you turn that volume up at room level volumes, it's going to sound even bigger. One of the biggest mistakes you can do is constantly mix at a high volume level for a couple of reasons. One, it fatigues your ears, which you can't then mix for longer periods of time. And when your ears start to get fatigued, you start to make bad decisions because your ears shut down in a way. The way the ear is designed is as it gets fatigued, it's going to close itself down a little bit, and you're going to start to compress itself to the point where you're not going to hear the frequencies as well as you should, especially on the high end. So you want to mix at a low volume level, and when you mix at a high volume level, you kind of psychologically get yourself to believe that louder is better. So you want something to sound better, great, just turn up the volume, right? We've talked about this a million times, but I think it's worth driving home this point again. Mix at low volumes, work with your EQ, work really hard with your EQ and your panning to make sure that you can hear all the instruments clearly and that you can pick out each individual instrument. So, for example, if you had a basic drum kit, bass guitar, acoustic guitar, electric guitar, piano, vocals, that at a low volume, you should be able to close your eyes and listen and focus and be able to pick each one of those instruments out and be able to hear them clearly. They may not all be at the same volume levels because you may have things further up in the mix or set back more in the mix, etc., etc. But you should be able to hear them all clearly. That's the tip. So we've said this before, but let's say it again. Mix at quiet volume levels. By doing that, you will achieve a much bigger sounding mix in the end because it'll make you work harder to make sure you have separation and clarity. Okay, so that's the first little tip of the day. The next 2 tips kind of go hand in hand, and again, kind of go back to this topic that came up with a couple of my students over the last month or so. The first being, the misconception is, especially with someone who's new to this mixing stuff, is that by that person feeling that if you want your mix to sound like my mix, that if you just get all the same plugins and I tell you all the same plugin settings, that you're going to be able to achieve the same results. And again, that is not true. And I had this happen where a student went out and bought, asked me what I kind of use in my setup, and went out and literally bought all the same equipment, which really blew me away. I wish I would have known that was the intent. I would have tried to put the brakes on that very quickly, and just thought that, I see Dave on YouTube, and if he does this, I'm going to do this, and if I do this, I'm going to have the same result. And although if you're buying the same gear and the same plugins because you're trying to make an investment and you're trying to set up your studio for the future, I guess that's one thing. But I can tell it was more because they thought that was a shortcut to get to learning how to use tools and learning how to use the gear to achieve the mix that they wanted to get. And that is a big mistake. And the second part of this is I had another student ask me, I mixed a song for them. They sent me this session, and they wanted me to then tell them all my plugin settings so they can use those settings for their next song. And I tried to reiterate, the plugin settings themselves mean nothing because it's only unique to that one specific song. So again, as a reminder to everyone, and a point to drive home here is, before you run out and buy a bunch of plugins and a bunch of new gear, you have to learn to use the gear that you have and learn the plugins that you have and how to use the basic fundamentals of things like EQ and compression and reverb and delay. But EQ and compression are the two top things that you need to learn how to master, quote unquote. And I use that term loosely. We're all trying to learn how to master it. I'm trying to learn how to master it still. Those two effects, if you will, or processing, EQ and compression, are the two most important things in getting a mix to sound balanced and sound professional. If you don't know the basic fundamentals of EQ and compression and how to apply it to a mix, or to individual instrumentation, you going out and buying a vintage plugin or buying the Universal Audio Collection or the Slate Digital Collection, whatever you see me using, is really irrelevant, and it's the wrong way to go. So I say this over and over again. Excuse me. I know it's 4:00 in the morning. I'm just waking up here, so excuse me. So what you need to do is you need to learn how to EQ and how to compress first with your stock plugins, whether you're using Pro Tools, Studio One, Logic, Cubase, doesn't matter. Excuse me. It doesn't matter what DAW you're using. They all come with stock compressors and EQs. Learn how to use those first. Then, and only then, when you get good at learning how to use them, if you want different flavors, then go out and buy different types of plugins if that's what you want to do, okay? So let's put the plugin thing aside. Now, the same thing goes for the settings. Me giving you settings on how I EQ'd a particular acoustic guitar, for example, means nothing to your next track when you have an acoustic guitar recorded. There are so many variables. Where was the guitar recorded? What kind of microphone was used? What kind of guitar was it? Was it a big-bodied guitar, a small-bodied guitar? How far was the microphone away from the guitar? Were there one mics? Were there two mics? Are there phasing issues? What size strings were on the guitar? Was it finger-picked? Was it strummed? There are so many variables that will change each time you go to process an acoustic guitar from an EQ standpoint that me giving you the settings on one particular session mean nothing. Is it a cheat sheet? I guess you can have kind of a cheat sheet of some go-to frequencies to get you kind of started. And if you take a look at something like EQ Made Easy, there's a frequency guide that kind of comes along with it. And I was a little reluctant to put that in the package because I didn't want people to use it as a crutch. But for the very beginner, I think it's a good way to have a beginning of a roadmap. But the goal was, and is to rip up that sheet and throw it in the garbage and use your ears. Once you know the basic fundamental frequencies of a specific instrument, to then use your ears and to customize it for that particular track. Okay, so I just wanted to make this quickly. I don't want this thing to even run 10 minutes. I'm going to edit it down if it's longer than 10 minutes because I want people to just, I don't want you to turn this off. I want you to listen. If you're a newbie and you're watching my channel, understand, regardless of what you see in the videos or what you see in other people's videos, you got to understand that EQ and compression are the two most important things you need to learn how to use with stock plugins first before you run out and buy a bunch of plugins. And using or copying the gear setup that someone else is using, thinking that's a shortcut to a better mix, is completely the wrong way of thinking. You have to change that way of thinking. Whatever interface you're using, whatever plugins you're using right now to get started is perfectly acceptable. The only time you should be ready to upgrade is when you've now kind of mastered that, year and master that, and you need something more, you need to get to the next level, or you need more options. If you're buying a new interface because you have only a 2-channel interface, 2 inputs, and now you're getting to the point you're going to record, say, small bands, and you need eight inputs. Okay, well, go out and buy an 8-channel interface. But do it for the right reasons. Okay, there's no shortcuts to learning how to do this. If you really want to learn how to mix like a pro and you really want things to sound professional, there are no shortcuts. You have to put the time in, you have to be willing to go through the training, and you have to be willing to mix over and over and over and over. It's no different than learning how to play an instrument. You got to put the 10,000 hours in, right? You got to put the 10,000 hours into mixing. It's a journey, it's a process. There are no shortcuts. And by you getting plugin settings or the same plugins, or just copying my physical gear setup and running out and spending, $5,000, $6,000, $10,000 on equipment when you're a beginner is a mistake. And I want to make sure that people understand that is a mistake. And I'm not, I hope no one gets the impression in my videos I'm condoning that you go out and buy a bunch of stuff. That's not, and I say it all the time. I show you what I use, and I tell you my opinions on vintage plugins and those things. Because for people that are ready to take that next step, I want to give them my opinion, because I use them. Lots of pros use them. There's nothing wrong with that, and you can use them too. But don't think that is the shortcut to a better mix. It is not. Learning how to use the tools is the key to all of this. Okay, so hopefully that helps. And again, I'm glad it came up, because I wanted to, these little mixing tips I'm going to throw out here now and again when things come up, and as I'm working with clients and with students, and I start to see patterns, I'm going to make these quick little videos. They're going to be impromptu. They're going to be 4 o'clock in the morning when I just get out of bed and my voice is still a little hoarse. But I want to throw out this tip to you. Think about that. Mix at low volumes. Forget plugin settings. Forget all the extra plugins until you learn how to use the ones that you have. So until next time, this is David from HomeRecordingMadeEasy.com, VisionRecordingStudios.com, and I will talk to you all soon, guys. Take care.